Today I will tell and show you what needs to be done to ensure that the brakes on your Peugeot 308 started working at 100%. In this case, it's all very simple. You just need to replace these rubber dust boots on the rear wheels. Just so you know, this trick isn't just for French engineers. I picked up this trick from a channel about Volkswagen. So, at the back, the guides fit very tightly into the dust boot, and during braking, the same guide moves back and forth along this dust boot. It seems all simple and logical. What is there to explain? But there's one very important point, even though it might not be obvious at first glance. I think to help you understand exactly how this works, I need to draw a little. Look. Here's a schematic and somewhat simplified view of how the guide and the dust boot look in cross-section. This is how it looks at rest. So the car is just moving, and when we press the brake, the guide shifts a little. So then the brake pad rubs against the brake disc and braking occurs. A very important point is these edges on functioning brakes. During braking, they deform a little. Well, the rubber is flexible, and when we release the brake, the rubber returns to its place accordingly, and the guides also go back to their exact position. This distance allows the pads not to rub against the disc when there's no braking, but still be as close as possible to the disc, so that in case of braking, let's say, just a light touch on the brake pedal would already make the pads start to rub. Or the disc and braking, it might not seem obvious, but it's these stops across the guide that prevent it from moving. It can, let's say, wobble back and forth. With significant wear on these rubber parts, specifically these stops, there are no longer any on the rear pads. The distance that the engineers intended, and accordingly, there's no longer the intended force that needs to be applied to the brake pedal for the rear wheels to start braking. In other words, of course, the wheels will brake, but the engineers, when they calculated everything, thought that the braking process would start right from the moment. Let's say, just a touch on the brake pedal. Well, or it would be more accurate to say not just a touch, but a minimal effort. But that's a certain amount of effort. And over time, the stops wear down. And when releasing the pedal, the guide doesn't move the required distance, it just means the force has decreased. And the brakes slow down less. And then there's a pit, a bump, all sorts of unevenness and other loads. And depending on the wear, the guide takes, let's say, this position. Well, or this. It's all very individual and depends on a lot of factors. But the main thing is, I hope you got it. Over time, all else being equal, the brakes don't work as perfectly. How they could work, how they should work. And besides the brake discs, brake pads, brake fluid and so on, this also has an impact. And these little dust covers, let me digress a bit. I've introduced a feature on my channel called sponsorship. If you're watching my channel because of the videos about the Peugeot 308, and if you like what I'm doing, and besides likes and kind words in the comments, you're ready to support the channel and its growth, I would be grateful, of course. It's not just for nothing, and not just for pretty eyes. Sponsors get some nice bonuses. All the details, the video link is in the description. Thank you. I hope I explained as thoroughly as possible, but at the same time simply, how it works and why this is also an important element of the braking system. Alright, let me tell you how this dust cover is changed. Naturally, everything is just crazy simple. We lifted the car with a jack, took off wheel. Don't forget about safety precautions. If we want to get home without injuries, and if we want to save the disc as well, we'll put something softer on top to cushion the impact. We would just play it safe completely. We're back. We removed the plug with a flathead screwdriver from the top and the bottom. And then with a 7mm hex key, we unscrew the guide bolts. Usually there's nothing complicated here. Just try not to scratch the guides so that the surface is as mirror-like as possible. Well, as much as possible. Otherwise, over time, the guide will mechanically wear down those stops by itself. That I mentioned earlier. Let's take a look at the old guide. It's dirty. It's nothing but rubber. I managed to clean most of it with a solvent, but the remnants come off really well with a small metal brush, or rather, an attachment for a drill. Quickly, efficiently, I really like it. I bought this tool in China many years ago. I haven't regretted it even once. Just so you know, there's a review linked in the description. Next, we slightly move the caliper to the side. It's not necessary to remove it completely. We only need access to the holes at the top and bottom. If you haven't been into the brakes for a while or haven't looked at them at all, then you'll probably find this tool useful. To perform a similar action, since I changed the discs and pads about a year ago, everything is much easier for me. We take out the old dust boot. The easiest way is to carefully pry it up with a thin screwdriver from all sides and then pull it out. This white powder is nothing but oxidation of the aluminum alloy. Ideally, the seating hole should be cleaned, preferably down to the metal. Sure, you could just stick it right in here, thinking it'll be good enough, but that's not our method. Again, we take the Dremel, attach the bit, a couple of moves, and it's done. Next, we take the new dust boot from the repair kit and insert it into place. To make it sit more evenly and easily, without much effort, I lightly lubricated it with silicone. That's it. As I said, it's all simple. Let's go into more detail. I'll focus on the repair kits. What types there are and what to buy? Look, the factory one is AT and the number is on your screen. Pricing and availability. You can check for yourself in your city. Next, there's an option from Frankit. Its main feature is that it's very soft and flexible. The rubber is just like rubber, well, as if it were made of rubber. You can press down the guide with just one finger. And there's this set, a rear caliper repair kit, which includes this dust boot, as well as many other parts. So, the dust boot from Autofriend is significantly stiffer and harder. You can feel it just by pressing on the rubber, as well as with the guide already installed. The difference is huge. Which option to choose, as they say, think for yourself. It's hard for me to say and give an answer right now. The 8s were quite hard and oaky, closer to Autofriend, but maybe it's just because they're old. But at one time, they were soft. Here, I'm not really sure, and that's why I decided to install Autofriend on one side and Frankit on the other. And don't think I'm completely weird, it just happened that I had one dust boot. I bought the second one specifically so you could see the difference. Well, just to avoid any trouble, after the installation, I drove a few dozen kilometers, about 40, and checked with a thermal camera to see what was happening with the brakes, how hot they were getting. The point is that if the anthers worked differently, with different force, then the brakes would also heat up a little differently. But the temperatures are very similar. Therefore, both options are suitable. Choosing between them seems even harder to me. So, you decide for yourselves. And to wrap it up, like everyone else, I'm not going to show you how to assemble it. It's all pretty obvious. Better. I'll cut open the old dust boots, and we'll take a look at the wear after 215,000 kilometers of driving. If we believe him, this is what these supports, or rings, look like. I'm not sure which term is correct. I didn't cut the new ones. But believe me, the new ones definitely look better. Well, that's about it. There's really not much more to add here. As they say, no nails, no rods, good luck on the roads. If you have anything to add, write it in the comments. Goodbye, everyone.